Welcome back to another episode of the Reforged podcast. My name is Drew, and it's an absolute pleasure to be speaking with you today. Today, we're going to be talking about giving graciously to the Lord. The Lord blesses us with a number of different resources, whether it be time, money, or different gifts that we might have. And it's our responsibility as Christians to be using those gifts to serve Him and to further His kingdom. Now, one area that I want to talk about first would be finances. That is something that I admittedly have had struggles with before. There are different times in my life where it's been easy to give financially to God, and there's been times where it's been more difficult. Sometimes the reason that's difficult is something like selfishness, where there's something that I might want, and so I don't want to give to God because I want to use my resources on myself. Sometimes it's fear of the future. If there's future instabilities, if I give something to God now, can I trust that He will provide for me with whatever's coming down the pipeline, whatever challenges I might face soon? Those are the two main reasons that sometimes it's hard for me to give. And another reason could just be sometimes maybe God's calling me to give in a way that I don't typically give, maybe give to a cause that I'm not typically, although it's a good cause, like I'm not typically involved in. And so it seems a little out of place for me. So sometimes that might be difficult too. Sometimes I might feel like it's not in my arena, maybe. Those are like the three main reasons that sometimes that could be difficult for me. What I want to do first before I give any of my own thoughts on it is refer to scripture. And this goes not just for the financial portion, but also the other portion that we might talk about. But it was actually the verse of the day on the Bible app when I was recording this. It is, let me pull it up, Matthew 6:19. I'm going to extend it 19 through 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So, this is a great example of addressing a number of different things, but I want to focus in on that kind of selfish bit that I was talking about. As humans, we tend to focus on what's directly in front of us. Sometimes we will plan for the future, usually out of fear or anxiety, but generally we're mostly focused on what our immediate situation is like. And that goes right along with this verse. When we're here in our time on earth, although we soon will spend an eternity with God, and the time that we're going to spend with God, of course, being an eternity, really this time on earth pales in comparison. It's like not even a speck. Yet we tend to focus on storing up treasures and wealth for ourselves while we're here on earth, and we don't always focus on building up those treasures of heaven, those things like goodwill and righteousness, service, perseverance, etc. And God is reminding us that ultimately all of the treasures we collect in this earth are going to fall apart. They're going to fade away. And even if they don't, we're going to leave them behind. So they're sure to fade away while we're gone. He wants us to instead lay up ourselves treasures in heaven. These things we talked about, righteousness, goodwill, good faith, and love, because there are no forces in heaven that can take away those things, because those things are of God and they're holy to Him, and that's what we're going to be surrounded with. There's no evil, there's nothing to degrade the splendor of what God has given and intended for us. He also says that where our treasure is, that's where our heart will be. So it's really important that we're actually storing these heavenly treasures, not just to give glory to God, not just because God is worthy of it, not just because it's what's best for our lives, but actually because by giving our attention to building up heavenly treasures and riches, that means that our heart will become closer and closer to God. Our heart is going to be nearer to where we store our treasure. We store our treasure in heaven, our heart will be close to heaven and close to God. So this verse is challenging to what I said earlier about sometimes struggling to give because of selfish reasons. I want to go back to, I put some notes down. There was a, I guess an example of this a couple weeks ago that I really thought would be a good thing to share, and this seems like a good opportunity. Um, I think that we should always be intentional about thanking God for the different financial blessings that we've been given, whether it be our wages from work or um, gifts from others, bonuses for performing well. Um, you know, you just picked up a small job and got some cash, right? We have different seasons where we may experience financial hardship, but we also have seasons where we might experience a financial blessing. And it's very important in both of those seasons to be praying, and in the season of blessing to be thanking God for the blessing you received, to be recognizing in gratitude what He has given you. Um, but also with those blessings that He gives us, they're not just made for us. Actually, it's supposed to be compounded. God blesses us so that we may be able to bless and provide for others in the same way that He does for us. So, really, being blessed financially is an opportunity to use these finances for good causes, to help out others. And there was again, it's a couple weeks ago, a time where I had received like my paycheck from work. It was really good. I was very happy, and I was praying and thanking God for it. And then I felt convicted that I should be praying for opportunities to use this to serve God. And I didn't honestly really want to. I said, "Well, God, you've given me this money, and I thank you for it." But I was kind of scared to be able to use those gifts to serve others because I thought then what would be left for me? I was grateful that God had blessed me, but I made it about me. I made it, I want this money, and if I spend it all on serving others, then like what am I going to have left for myself? And that was a big thing. I think there was greed and selfishness. I think also the hesitation to do that came also from the fear that I mentioned earlier, that fear of like, well, what costs are coming down the pipeline? Like, I might need this money for something, right? I mean, I'm going to school soon. Um, I've got like a laptop that I just paid for. It was pretty expensive, all this kind of stuff. Um, like, what's gonna happen then if I give up all this money? And I think ultimately I was letting worldly treasures, but also the distractions of the world, the fears and temptations of the world, bring me away from God and bring me away from my trust from God. Ultimately, if God had just blessed me financially, then there's no reason that I shouldn't trust that He will provide for me once again if I should need it. But that's not how I felt in the moment. Regardless of those feelings, though, because I'm grateful to have um, a strong Christian faith and background. I knew that although I was feeling these things, I should ultimately submit my trust to God. And so I did pray, and I learned that lesson by praying that I really should always be putting my trust in God, and that includes with my resources. If God has blessed me with the resources, then I should trust God to show me how to use them, and I should also trust God to fulfill my needs with the resources as well. And that's where I kind of got this idea for this episode, and that's where I kind of like expanded out from just financials. We're expanded out into time and spiritual gifts or callings that you might have, because um, ultimately all of these resources are the same. God gives us all these resources, whether it be time, whether it be a gift, whether it be money. He gives them all to us to use to further His kingdom. So there's really no difference. We might think of them a little bit differently, but there's really no difference. I've had times where just like I struggled to be willing to give financially in this moment. I've had times where I've struggled to give my time to volunteer, whether it be at my church, at a youth group, or even like to spend time helping out a friend or family member. If there's something else that I might want to do, if it gets close to a conflicting scheduling event, and even though I realistically have enough time to do it, I could be like, well, maybe because I have something else going on later, I don't have to do it. That kind of thing. That happens to me. Or I shouldn't say that happens to me. I should say I make those choices sometimes. I am responsible for that. And with different gifts too, there are things that I may be good at and able to do, but sometimes I don't want to do them, whether it be because I want to try doing something else, whether it be I don't want the responsibility, whatever it might be. A good example of that, I've been volunteering on my church's production team, doing a lot of different things now, graphics, sound, whatever. But I started out just doing graphics for a long time. And there are things that I am capable of doing. Maybe not to the same level as some of my peers, but like stuff like on the soundboard. Or a good example too is when I initially was just serving in the student ministries. Like as a student, I was also on their student production team. But then I moved into also serving on graphics in like adult services as well. And and that's an example of like stepping out of my comfort zone, knowing that hey, I'm able to do something, but maybe I don't want the responsibility. Maybe I don't want to be called here, but ultimately I am called here, and so I'm going to go there. Um, so I know that was kind of almost a tangent, a lot of unrelated things, but the main idea that encompasses all of that is the idea that we've been given gifts, resources like time and money and skills by God, and God wants us to use them to further His kingdom, to serve others, and to bring Him glory. And what I learned by praying when I was struggling to give financially, I got that commitment that I had to God tested, and I learned that I ultimately had to submit to Him even when I didn't feel comfortable doing so, even when I maybe didn't want to, or maybe I was fearful of the future. Ultimately, I submit to Him. And I want to also touch on you don't always see what the results of that labor are. And I know there was a couple of days after that where I didn't really see any new opportunities to give. And so I was grateful that I still did that prayer because it taught me something internally to trust God with that. But then actually after that, there were a number of opportunities that became apparent to donate, and I prayed with God, felt called to those things. I was able to help out like a friend who was fundraising for a missions trip. I was able to donate to my younger brother who is running with Team Road Vision, just as I used to before I had to move away. Although I am still fundraising for them. So there's a link in the description if you would like to donate to that. It's a great cause. You can also check out the website if you want to learn more information about that organization and the good work they're doing to bring clean water. But yeah, I got to donate to my younger brother who's doing that well, and that was a great way to encourage him to keep doing what he's doing, but also to make that change. Um, and then that was also when I went to do my tithe at the end of that month. I always like to pray because there's a lot of different areas that I can tithe to. At my church, they have different kind of, I'll call them departments, different pools you can put your money into, um, whether it be to support like the production team or the outreach team, or they do a thing called the Dollar Club where they just, the idea is that you donate like $1 every month. You can donate more though, so I usually do if I'm donating there or not. But by collecting that money, they'll find a cause monthly, a community need, someone who needs it, or an organization that needs it, and then they'll make a donation to them. But basically, yeah, there's a lot of different places I could donate to. And after praying to God, I felt called to like three different, to break up the funds between like three different groups. And then at church the next week, I was able to see kind of the benefits of where that money went. And that was just a really powerful experience that, again, God does not always allow you to see the fruits of your labor. God does not always show you the impact of what you've done. But that was a great example of a time that He did show me. And it just, all it did was just reinforce what I already knew to be true, that trusting God with what I have will allow me to do great things. This is sort of just a random thought I just had in this moment that God gave me is um, it's like the parable of, I don't know exactly how to word it properly, but there was the servants of the king, and he gave them each gold coins in varying amount and told them, to keep it safe while he's gone. And there were the ones who invested it. There's ones who put it into a bank. A lot of different things. And when they did that, they made interest, they made a big impact with what they were trusted with. And then there was the person who ended up burying the coin just to keep what little thing they had, just to hold on and scrounge to that. And ultimately, when the master came back, he was very satisfied with those who had invested the money and actually given him back more than he trusted them with. And he ended up trusting them with more. So, this idea of when you're trustworthy with what you have, you'll be given more to be trustworthy with. And yet, the servant who held on tightly to what he had because he had the fear of losing it, the king was very frustrated with him, and he was not trusted with any more because he hadn't done anything impactful. God doesn't give us these resources just to hold on to cling for ourselves. To, as hard as it is sometimes to accept that, but He expects us to do more, and it's not by our own power, but by His. He just needs our trust, and He'll show us the way. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Just a quick update next week. We're going to be taking a break from the show. I'm going up to volunteer at a youth group summer camp for a week, and I don't have anything pre-recorded, so I won't have an episode uploaded next Friday. But the Friday after that, I will be resuming the show. So thank you for your continued support. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like. Feel free to follow this show, whether it be on YouTube or Spotify, whichever platform you're listening on. Also, feel free to please share this show with any friends or family that you think might benefit from hearing this, whether they're Christians or not, whether you think these are just good ideas or not, whatever it might be, just please continue to help this show grow. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope you all have a God bless week, and always remember, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.